Banking on Trust Data, Powering Agentic AI, Personalization, and Security. Kevin Bohan, Director of Product Marketing at De Novo Technologies. Please welcome. All right.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm in a good advantaged spot after the morning sessions. Many of the things that were talked about earlier, I'm going to tie up into a single topic. Lori was talking about in the first session the need to get to a point, that tipping point where you have trust in the data. The next panel talked about a number of different challenges and blockers around data silos, or the need for a governed layer sitting atop the different data sources. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today in the session. So AI success is measured in what business results you're going to be able to deliver. Yet most of the companies that started out with early AI projects are yet to show a meaningful return on the equity that they put into that investment. And there's a number of different reasons for this, but one of the main reasons, and it was highlighted by a number of the different speakers earlier this morning, is the lack of a trusted data foundation for the AI projects that are taking place. What's happening is many of the projects started out and did everything in a single silo. And you're redoing work, but you're also not getting that consistency. You're not getting that governance that's required to be successful. That's just not what we're seeing in the market. Gartner's identified this. They're talking about organizations significantly underestimating what's needed to be successful with AI and agentic AI. And a key at it, I'm not going to go into the details on what they're talking about, but the key is having access to a distributed data sets and having the proper controls in place. AI is going to be more accurate with the more information you give to them. AI is going to be more accurate when they have multiple sources to use as reference, so they just don't have one specific view at the information. So there's a number of issues that are causing this challenge around trust. The first is no live situational awareness. Much of the data architecture that we have in place was designed for reporting dashboards. It's leveraging batch processes to bring it into a data warehouse or a lakehouse. And that's not given the need for real-time information. If you're having your agents work on information that's a couple of hours old, could be a couple of days old, they're going to make decisions that aren't up to the minute, not responding in the way they want. Also, without the proper context, without the proper information being provided to the models, they're not going to know the proper source of information they should be using for this particular request, for this particular activity. And again, because they require so many different data sources, knowing which ones, it's not always a single data source, which ones they should be using is critical, and the context is key around that. And then the other is having the proper governance and controls, and being able to leverage what you're doing from a central location and not worrying about that at each of the different data sources that these models are using. So what we see as a best practice is start from a business-first approach. Early on, I think a lot of the projects started out as we have the technology running around to look at how you can use it. The old analogy, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That approach isn't working. We see it in the results of the projects that are successfully delivering value for the business. So this business-first approach, identify a specific measurable business outcome you're looking to achieve. And I'll get into more about in each one of these. Once you have that, it's easier to identify what information is going to be required to address that need. Once you do that, what you can do is you can start building out that context. A semantic layer is going to allow you to build that context, define it once, and allow it to be reused in multiple locations. And then by delivering it via data products, it's going to be the easiest way to scale. But I'll talk a little bit about a practical approach to that as well. So to start, when you're identifying what projects you want to work on, It's not enough to say we want to improve the customer experience. Be specific, be meaningful in what you're driving at. So what is the goal that you want to measure? What's the time frame you want to be able to deliver that in? The more specific you can be, the more focused the work you're going to do, the more alignment you're going to get around the different stakeholders. Alignment between the business users, the data teams, the AI teams. Everyone involved can be more specifically aligned if they know what you're going for. The other thing is, I'm sure, being on the data side of things, we all run into the scenario of you're trying to bring business people into a conversation to talk around governance or talking around different data tables you're trying to deliver, and they're not that interested. If you start talking specifically to one of the measurements they have for being successful, they'll be calling the meetings, they'll be dragging you into the meetings. So this is an important aspect that's helpful. Just a few examples. I'm not going to talk about these, but you can see that I'm trying to provide the example where you're providing what you want to measure, what's the improvement you're looking for, and the time frame you're looking to do it in. And I'll drill down on one of these in a minute. But once you do that, this alignment allows there to be very narrowed scoping in that identifying of the data you need. What it allows also is for this to become more of a strategic conversation that's being driven from the business and the people from the technology side, or the data teams and the AI teams bringing it together. And it's no longer a theoretical conversation, but what it ends up being is something that is able to be focused on and achievable, as opposed to trying to say, we need to get our data AI ready. That's a Hercules task, especially for large organizations. Being able to do this, focus on one specific project, then do another project. After you do several of them, you'll see that there's a repeatable process that you can then start rolling out and scaling. So just to look at one of these examples, if you take a project that's specifically focused around driving improvements in the identification of fraud, you're not going to be successful with that if you're not able to provide information in real time. If you're expecting agents to take action, they're going to be able to they need to be able to take action before the fraud is actually taking place. So you need to be able to provide that real-time access. That information is going to be pulled from multiple systems. On the right is just an example of a handful of the systems that would be involved to support a fraud use case. You're going to need to be able to break down those silos and pull that information in from all different data sources. You're also going to need the proper guardrails in place. So what is a fraudulent transaction, or what's the definition of a high-valued customer? All the different examples, but you need to understand exactly what you're talking about, and that understanding is shared between all involved. So the traditional approach of providing up the information the way you might in a dashboard is different than what's needed when you're talking about agentic AI. So now establishing a universal semantic layer, rather than building this logic inside of the particular agent you're building, by establishing this once and allowing it to be reused, it allows you to have shared understanding of what the business means, and not having that information tied to the physical storing of the information. It also allows you to centrally define attributes about the information that then can be used for security and governance. So you can identify that this information contains personally identifiable information, or personal healthcare information, whatever the attributes are, and then using those attributes that are defined as part of the semantic layer, you can define global policies regardless of where that information is being pulled from. So it adds a tremendous power of that defining once and having it applied everywhere, and it simplifies things significantly. It also allows for providing the abstraction between where the data is being stored and how it's being consumed. And it allows to drive consistency. But what this does is it provides a boundary between what you're doing with AI models when you're building out agents and what you're doing on the data layer. And by doing that, it's a significant value. What we've seen is a lot of the projects were redoing work. You're redoing work that then needs to be verified and validated. You need to redo the governance and ensure that the security is appropriately defined. That is what's slowing projects down. Not doing it appropriately and thinking of it later on in the projects is causing a significant problem. So what it does is it allows you to define that contract between the data producers and the data consumers. And it also allows you to define the criteria in which the information is going to be provided, the business terms and all of that's going to be used. So let me just explain this and how it builds out and how you can do this practically within an organization. So you have this single point of access for anyone looking to consume information. So they come to this source, and it's able to, in real time, deliver data from a variety of different sources. So whether that's coming from traditional databases and data warehouses that have structured information, or it's coming from SaaS applications with semi-structured information, or other sources, whether it's documents, images, or other unstructured data sources, all of that is surfaced and presented to the user from a single access point. And the way that that works is the data engineers will build out and define how those sources get integrated, how those sources and the data sources will be modeled to present the information to the end users. It will define the semantics and the business logics being used there, and it brings together the different data sources. The security and governance teams get involved to define how that information is going to be controlled. It can pull this information in from other catalogs they're using, so tools like Calibra and other similar data governance tools, or it could define it directly within the semantic layer, where I talked about earlier, the attributes where you can define whether it's a personally identifiable information or other sensitive information, and then define global policies that do the not only access controls, but how it should be handled. Should the data be masked? Should it be prevented from being accessed in certain regions? So you can control attribute-based access controls too. If you have employees that have access to the data, but now they're traveling and maybe they're no longer within Canada, and you don't necessarily want the data to leave a specific region or sovereignty area, you can define those rules too based on the attributes. Now, all of this can be automated or augmented, and in most cases it's augmented because you have a human in the loop. But much of those tasks around building out the models, building out the SQL to bring in the different information, the proper tagging of the fields, the names, the descriptions of the views and the columns and all of that. LLMs do a great job at doing that, but again, you want that human in the loop to verify what they're doing. They could tag something that has a long, 16-digit number, thinking it's account number or other information, but it might not be. It might be something unrelated, and you can double check and make sure that they're not making mistakes. Because while AI is good, it does make mistakes, and you have that in the middle. Once you do this, what you've created is a single access point for your dashboards, your reporting, but also you can expose a data marketplace that allows users to come and explore and find other information. That experience that provides an Amazon-like shopping experience that recommends different data products that might be interesting to them, that provides them recommendations based on trends that they see other people using this information. The more you're able to surface to the users, the better able to make use of that information. Going back to what the last panel was talking around self-service. Also, what you can do is expose that information to agents. You can do this through simple REST calls, obscuring what's required for a developer to be able to be successful in building out a chatbot or an agent, because they can just use standard REST calls, and the complexity of LLM orchestrations, vector databases, the chunking, and all of that information could be obscured by them, and it would be handled by the platform. But also what it does is offers a standard interface using MCP. So you can use the tools in place if you are an AI developer and using the tools that they're building out, different agents and chatbots and alike. They can do that and use the standard interface. All of that offers the same security and governance and guardrails in place that you're getting from the things that we talked about earlier. That significantly simplifies what's being done by the developers. So a key here is by separating what AI developers need to do in terms of data, in terms of the proper governance and guardrails, or presenting that information in the right format to be used by the agents, shouldn't be an issue that AI developers worry about. They should be able to call a single data service and get the information they need. They can focus on the things that they need to worry about around the planning of how to execute that particular request or the orchestration, all of the things that they need to focus on, and they have a single source that they come and get access to this trusted information. By doing that, you're going to significantly accelerate what's going to be able to be achieved by your AI developers, people building out those AI projects. But what it also does, it allows a separation between what you're doing in the models and what you're doing from a governance perspective. There's no reason you should be binding those together. Things are moving very quickly, and you need to be able to react if there's a new legislation put in place to require, certain treatments around AI, and that should be able to be done in a global situation, not asking each of the developers to go back in and change what they've already created with inside of the models. Sorry. So an easy way to scale this and to create that abstraction I talked about is exposing these as data products. We're all familiar with data products. They're bundling of not only the information, but also the definition, quality standards, governance rules, all packaged into a reusable asset. And what this does is it allows for, in an ideal situation, you to federate who's going to build out these data products, have the ownership of the data products, because now what you're able to do is simplify this, where now the people that are more familiar with the particular information that's being bundled up, packaged, they can add that context better than a centralized team. They can own that and be involved in making sure that that information evolves as the needs within the organization evolves. And it also allows governance to be embedded within everything that's taking place. And again, this creates that ability to encapsulate the logic that's well known by the people closer to the information to be building out these tools without necessarily having to have them take on additional burden. Now, not all organizations can adopt that at this point. People are at different stages of maturity in their data management. So think more data products as a delivery model, not necessarily an organizational construct. What I often have when we're having the conversation with customers is saying, but we're not quite there. Our teams aren't mature enough, or some teams are and other teams aren't. It's going to be different at each organization how you are able to deploy the concepts of a data products, but don't think of this as having to follow that initial aspirational definition I had on the previous slide, but think of it more as this is a way to align business closer to the ownership of the data, and it's also a way to deliver consistent governance as you deliver these reusable assets by the business. When you do that, you're going to get that flexibility and ability to scale better. So what's changing when you take this approach? You're moving from that traditional model where a lot of the work is being redone over and over again each time you deliver a new project. And instead what you're doing is you're delivering reusable assets that can be used by everyone in the organization. And when you do that, you have the consistency in how you're defining the semantics or the context. You're having consistency in how people are talking about specific metrics and data points, but also you get the reuse and the governance built into the project. And that goes significantly into addressing the issues that we talked about. When earlier we were saying what's causing us from not having trustworthy data, It was not having access to live information, being able to pull that data in directly from wherever it resides in real time, not using the traditional ETL types of approaches. They have their place, and it's good to continue using them, but what you need to do is bridge that with other systems within your organization. So you need to be able to provide that live context. You need to be able to provide the context so these agents know what data is the best to help address the request that they're looking to execute on. And then finally, you need these consistent guardrails in place that will allow you to ensure that you have the security and governance, that you're using models that have already been vetted and approved, so this doesn't have to be done for each particular project. So with that, what I'd like to do is open it up for questions. Happy to answer any questions now. I also know I'm standing between you and lunch, so if you want, you could also catch me in the area over there. So does anyone have any questions?
I do. I was talking with your colleague earlier in the break, and understanding what you guys do, because this is, I'm gonna get here because I think that creates the feedback. So basically, if we have the data sources all around, you connect all the data without moving the data. But also, for example, in our case, we come from a data modernization, which we centralize the data in a big platform. Of course, we have maybe 80% of the data. But I think that going with you has to be a decision taken early on, in terms of, like, if you're thinking about making a big investment to centralize the data, also weigh the option of not centralizing the data, but connecting the data in this other way. Would that be fair to say?
Yes and no. In no way are we suggesting you shouldn't take a centralized approach. It's needed for analytics, and traditional data warehouses, lakehouses, they're great for the analytical use cases. They're not necessarily great for operational use cases. You have a lot of operational systems that the data isn't in the data warehouse. So what we're able to do is bring together those data sources with other data sources, because success with the AI and AI agents is going to be offering a variety of different data sources, and they're coming from third-party sources. They're coming from information from the website and how customers interacted with your web pages. It's coming from a variety of different sources, and being able to bring together what you already have inside of your data warehouse, data lakehouse, with those other sources, and being able to do it and offer real-time access to that information, that's where you're going to be able to deliver the more contextually accurate live access to information. So we're not suggesting those are not a way to go, but what it is move in what you need to into those central repositories, and bridge the gap between the other sources with what you need to do from an AI perspective.
Amazing. Okay. Well, thanks for your advice.
Okay.
And also, like, semantic layer is something that we're looking, it rings a bell, like in the moment that we are now. I think, I'll have to understand a little bit more about it, and maybe it's a conversation we're going to have offline, but it's very interesting.
Okay. Great. Any other? Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So now it's me between you and lunch. So we have a networking lunch. It's now at 1:15. So okay, we still have some minutes, and then we're gonna be back at 2:30. So my advice is go take your lunch, but also for me, I've been listening to some of the speakers as being the people or the sponsors that are in the other room, and I definitely, in the moment that I am, I've been in the last 3 years working really hard on deploying and evolving the AI program in where I work. And funny enough, we have done a tremendous amount of work that we have deployed, we have adoption, So like I thought that this journey was going to end up sort of like the Olympics. I was going to get a medal, and then I was going to get some rest. And I was going to be maybe like, doing some sponsorship of cereals or something. But I was going to get some rest. But actually what happened is I get more pressure. And now we want to go bigger, and then we need to connect to many different systems. And my world is growing rapidly, like I said, with the app engineering team. And I'm like absorbing the whole company in a way that is very challenging. And hearing some of the things that they are offering, like a click for the cost, as well as the connection between things, and this one in the semantic layer, like I really will appreciate to talk to them a little bit later.